Ultimately, it's a little bit more serious, but you'd probably be forgiven if the story I'm about to discuss today doesn't just feel like another episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Well, China in the last week has once more lifted the ban on the delivery of new commercial aircraft from Boeing, just weeks after really enacting the Retaliation Act. Bloomberg News reported that China has axed the ban after it agreed to a temporary cut in tariffs with the United States, which were impacting the ability to take on new planes. News of the retaliatory rejection of the new planes being dropped is huge for airlines that obviously call China home and are ultimately relying on the delivery of new commercial airplanes to not only help facilitate their own fleet replacement efforts, but also grow. This also means that many airlines we know that expressed interest in the possible acquisition of planes first destined for Boeing will no longer have the opportunity unless another U-turn is taken between China and the United States. And as I touched on at the beginning of this video, this whole story feels like a very much episode of reality TV, so really just expect it to always change and shift. The possible acquisition of what would have become whitetails became of great interest to the likes of Air India among some other companies, who were in the process of major renewal efforts and relying on the delivery of new commercial airplanes. If China were to say not accept new deliveries from Boeing, which was the case for a few weeks, this would present fresh chances for airlines seeking to grow their fleet rather quickly to take on these planes. Something similar happened in Russia when conflict broke out and aircraft manufacturers could not deliver commercial aircraft to this country. Those planes then found new homes at other airlines willing to take them on sooner rather than later. I'm not comparing the set of circumstances, it is ultimately different, but the premise of being incapable of sending a new aircraft to a certain market certainly remains true for both cases. At least one has now been solved. China first confirmed in April that it would ban new commercial aircraft deliveries from Boeing. The landmark decision had a lot of broader effects on the industry if it was going to be followed through for a long period. Aircraft that were already destined for customers in China when the suspension was implemented were then forced to return to territories of the United States without their end customer taking on the plane, which made headlines in itself. China imposed the rejection because it felt the terms being placed on itself by the US were ridiculous, and as a retaliation act, it began looking towards US-based customers to cease trading with them or make life difficult for all parties involved. And Boeing, being an American plane manufacturer that provides aircraft for customers, naturally also customers within China, was added to the long list of companies that were unable to execute the transfer of goods. However, tariffs have been slashed between the two biggest economies in the world, and therefore deliveries can now recommence, a win for all parties. Given, however, the continued political uncertainties and, as many industry analysts have flagged, the ups and downs experienced just between China and the US in the last half-decade and beyond, just because a resolution has been found now doesn't mean it will stand, and things could greatly change in let alone 1 month or 6 months. They really are able to change even at an hour notice. So it is a positive that we've reached a point where both parties believe that deliveries can recommence, and obviously you'd say Chinese airlines are probably breathing a sigh of relief if they were unable to take on new commercial planes. How would this affect their growth? And obviously how would this affect Boeing's performance in China, which is a hugely important market for them, as we know, huge amounts of growth and a lot of requirement for renewal. Keen to hear your take down below in the comments. I am obviously aware that this still is a very much sensitive topic and people will have probably much deeper thoughts on US and China and so forth, but just try and stick to it from an aviation POV. How are you feeling about, say, now deliveries being able to recommence? How do you believe this will benefit airlines? And let's say that we saw retaliation acts once more put in place in, say, 6 or 12 months. This may not happen. Just keen to hear you speculate down below what this would mean for other airlines, maybe potential opportunities, and Boeing themselves, who we know are relying on new aircraft deliveries to try and help their finances. Thanks for watching, take care, do be safe, and I'll see you tomorrow for your next industry recap.
And we'll fly.